Okay, then and the recording's starting now. Thanks very much for your time, gentlemen. Steve, do you want to explain to Mark and Jim Kosteva a little bit of what you do there at Saginaw Valley?
I'm the AVP of Facilities Planning and Construction, and I'm also work with the MIAPA Energy Engineers Group. I helped form it about 4 years ago. We have 32 colleges and universities, including all of the state universities that are 15 of those that are members of this Energy Engineers Group. And we basically try to share information and work with each other on reducing our energy uses. And we have a meeting coming up this next week at CMU, and I was trying to help out your cause here a little bit by providing an agenda spot to present something for the code work that you're all doing. So there may be some people at that group that would like to join, help out, help work with you in the future. So that's what I'm here for.
Okay.
And Steve knows my parents up in Midland. Good morning, Steve.
Hi, Mark. I was wondering if it was a Krueger or a Krueger there, but
it is Mark Krueger, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Nice to hear you again, Mark.
Well, thanks very much, Stephen. Mark, do you want to tell the others? Sounds like you and Steve already know each other, but Mark, do you want to explain to Jim what you do?
Yeah, Wisciani is a nationwide engineering and architectural firm. Our work is primarily in the area of working on existing construction, fixing problems with buildings. I'm a structural engineer, and I've been with the firm 28 years, and also serve on the State Code Review Committee. So reviewing the IBC and the residential code, international residential code, for incorporation into the Michigan administrative rules.
Mark, what's the formal name of the group that you're on? There's a number of commissions, but I was trying to find your name on here and I couldn't.
Yeah, I am on. It's actually an ad hoc review committee. So they meet. The committee is called together every 3 years when the new ICC codes come out, and we do our work. And we just finished reviewing the 2012 residential code, and we'll soon be starting on the 2015 codes. So
okay.
Right now they're not, I guess, not meeting at the moment.
Okay. I love ad hoc committees. Thanks. Also of importance to us was that you were the one who informed me that there was some back and forth about the competition among the standards developers of the ICC, International Fire Code, and also NFPA 1. So that's important to us because that is on the agenda, or at least part of that's on the agenda. But also, you and I have been working on the Structural Engineering Institute's live loading tables. And just as an FYI, I did put our proposals out to the ICC, I believe it was in mid-January, so several of those went out, and we can talk more about that. We have a little bit more time. So let's, Jim, are you able to spend a few minutes telling the Mark and Steve what you do?
Yes, correct. Oh, I'm in the Office of Government Relations here at the university, and obviously part of an entire government relations team that monitors and works on university interests in Washington, Lansing, and here locally.
Okay. All right, then. Well, thanks very much for that. And let's see if we can start getting through this and making some decisions. Does anyone have anything? I want to make your time worthwhile. Are there any immediate questions we can get to If you've had a chance to look over, typically we have more to talk about than we have time. Is there anything that, say, Jim or Mark or Steve, that we can answer right away before 10:30 rolls around?
Well, help me understand. Steve, you mentioned that there's this upcoming meeting in at Central. So this is a portion of the MIAPA group, or it's a committee?
Yes. Well, we started separate, but we are all MIAPA members, and so we are part of MIAPA now.
All right.
We are their conference, the MIAPA conference. There's 2 a year. It actually starts Monday night. We start at noon on Monday. The energy engineers, and many of our people wear several hats, especially at the smaller schools, and so energy is one of those things. But many of them are facilities directors and that sort of thing. So we start early, and we have our meeting for noon to 5, and we just meet among ourselves and present things to to each other and share information, that sort of thing. So we are, yes, part of the MIAPA group.
All right. And do you have any ability to characterize the feelings of the group regarding these issues with the state construction codes and representation on the boards, as to the elements that present challenges and difficulties and unnecessary costs to universities or other major public institutions across the state?
We haven't talked about that very much. We have run into, at least heard about, some things that the state is doing politically otherwise besides the codes. Some of the requirements that state facilities for energy conservation use ESCOs, certain ones that are on lines, and we have opinions about that aren't all positive. But other than that, we're not really tuned into, at least we haven't talked about it, the code issues particularly.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what our 3 o'clock meeting is. Rich Robin is going to present to the energy group. I was just in Hilton Head for almost 8 days last week, and I have more travel coming up. So in light of the fact, Steve, that it doesn't appear as though we're going to get any coalition, we're not going to be able to put together a standards council at MIAPA until MAPA does something, then MAPA does something, if APA does something. Since all that doesn't seem to be a straight line, so to say,
Right.
The issues still persist. And so that's what this is, a draft agenda, and that's what I'll be, after I get off this call, gentlemen, Steve, I'll be working on this. A lot of this, we use these 4 terms. What do you do? We make things safer, simpler, lower cost, and longer lasting. We feel that if you don't understand that, maybe we have to have a different conversation. So it's fairly clear. So, Steve, just to let you know, I'm using the old MIAPA Standards Council website for our agenda update. And Mark, you were involved about a year or so. Well, you've been following us all along, actually. You've been one of the more attentive individuals in the state on this. Maybe you can answer a little bit of Jim's question, since you've seen us try to get a standards council set up for MIAPA. Do you have any thoughts, Bill? I'm sorry, Mark?
On whether or not, I mean, I do think one thing that is lacking in the input that the state is getting on building codes is the owner's insight into these things. Obviously, universities, but I mean even major industrial facilities, GMs and in those types of the world. So I do think that there should be a place at the table for the owners, and so far that just doesn't seem to. It's been, I mean, it's kind of because of the way the code is developed, and it's kind of ICC is a group of building officials, and so it's kind of come from that angle and hasn't taken kind of more the ENC approach of developing a consensus among all the groups that are affected by the code.
Mark, is that within the purview of your the review committee, the code review committee that you're on, to make that kind of a recommendation? Is that within your purview?
No. The ad hoc committee that I'm on really just reviews the changes
Technical
to the
elements.
building code and makes recommendations to the director of the Bureau of Construction Codes.
Mm-hmm. Just to help Mark and Steve a little bit, is that Jim's been with us for a better part of a year now. Is that about right? You started meeting with Rich and I about a year ago?
Yep.
Yeah, so our idea here, I think there's general agreement that the user interest is probably the least represented interest in the, not just the state of Michigan, but the U.S. and the global standards development space. A lot of that is because the expertise, the people whose main job is to enforce the codes for public safety purposes. They're the experts, and they actually have a budget to do that. It's part of the policing powers granted to all governments, make things safe. And so those people tend to be typically the most knowledgeable. However, our standard system and the standard system of other nations is one that contemplates the balanced market. But we know that the user, person who, what we call the final user owner, final fiduciary, the person who ultimately has to reconcile those competing requirements of safety economy, that they aren't at the table. Among other things, Steve, you could say you're just too busy. And Mark sees it from a consultant standpoint because he's there trying to make a structure fit a budget, working with an architect, etc. So, but the difficulty we've had, gentlemen, Mark and Steve, is that we want to be mindful that we're citizens of the state of Michigan, and being in the business of change, that's kind of what we do, that we can't step on toes or be too forceful about our point. We are granted by charter from ANSI all the way up to the federal government, up and down, of the right for the user to have a say in how regulations are put to us. But we almost never, we have a very weak presence. And the fact that we're trying to have a stronger presence is irritating to the incumbent interests.
You're talking about being busy, and most people are with their regular job, and so it's not always very efficient to just have volunteerism do the heavy lifting on any of this stuff. I'm wondering if somebody's ever been to the President's Council, University President's Council.
Well, that's why Jim, that's Jim's role.
Right, and tried to get the various universities to allocate, half of a person's time or something like that to a cause like this. If it's going to be a university, now maybe that wouldn't be politically correct, but I think somebody's going to need to have their time allocated and dedicated and described as being able to work on this in order to really be effective, and then find people that would be qualified for that, have the knowledge of what they're working on. But I don't. That's just a thought that I.
Well, that's not too far afield from thoughts that I've shared with with Mike and Rich before, and that the way I thought that it would get to the President's Council would be through MIAPA first. Just that it would be, and folks can help me, but I thought that the facility managers that are represented and associate VPs such as yourselves and others would collectively bring this type of concern and say, we're your facilities and construction people on your campuses, and we're running into these kinds of problems as we work to implement the state construction codes. And here's the kind of restrictions that they're imposing. Here's the costs, the unnecessary costs that, or here's some examples of the types of unnecessary costs that these code provisions are bringing to our institutions. And if MIAPA would then, I thought that would be the intermediate step, that MIAPA would bring those, then present those collectively to the President's Council, and to gain their attention and gain their support, and then let the President's Council offer some consideration as to do they recommend collectively that institutions devote some personnel and time, or do they collectively attempt to devote some legislative kind of attention and effort from the President's Council's Lansing representatives to talk with officials at LARA or at the state construction code level to how do we begin to get that representation?
Well, it's a bit of a leap to get right from MIAPA to the President's Council. I mean, we all work for CFOs, basically, right. And so they have get-togethers on their own. And I mean, yep. I know nationally, like Nakubo and some of those. I don't know what they use to get together and talk on a statewide basis, but if you all or somebody that knew about this could make a presentation to their group, then at least you could get to the presidents. They would be the ones worrying about the money, I would think. Now, it's between that, or maybe you have an organization of your group, I mean your job, with the state, at least the state universities. I don't know if there would be.
Yes, I mean the state relations officers do get together and talk, just as you speculated the CFOs do. Yeah.
Yeah, and now, so I don't know. It's somehow we have to. It would be good, I think, if the universities did allocate some time and energy or money, or maybe they get together and hire somebody, or somehow this happens. But without somebody's time being dedicated for these efforts, I don't think it'll happen very easily.
Hi, Sal.
Hi, sorry about that.
Hi. Hi, gentlemen, this is Sal DiChristina. I have always extended a welcome to a new Big Ten university. Sal is calling in from Rutgers right now. Is that right, Sal?
That's correct.
Yeah, we are having a bit of a problem with your feedback, though, and that's usually solved by turning off your speakers or calling in on the telephone. Do you think you'd be able to do that? Because it's a bit of an echo for us. Or I could mute you and you could just listen.
I'm going to get off the phone and I have you online.
Sal, I just had to mute you because I couldn't hear you. So I'm going to send you a message here and let me know in about a minute. I'll turn you back on again, and presumably you will have called in on your phone or turned off your speaker, and we can avoid the feedback problem. Well, I'm glad. So getting back to this, I'll get back to Sal in about a minute. I'm glad, Steve, you're hearing this from Jim. I'm glad you're hearing this from Steve and from Mark.
Right, Vice. Right. Yeah. And so, how do we? How does this get? Okay. Whatever the step is, it's got to be. If the step is to get it in front of the CFOs of our respective institutions, then, Steve, am I hearing that it's going to take some individuals at a select number of the institutions to spend the time with their respective CFOs, so that they in turn will then feel comfortable bringing it to the table when they do get together to talk?
Well, I don't know. There might be a shorter direction.
Shorter
here.
step. Okay.
If if some place like, and I'm thinking of the University of Michigan, because you all have been dealing with this code stuff for quite a while, and you've made some commitments for sustainability and some obviously have business interests. Is there some way to get to a president and ask them to bring it up at the president's forum at the state level? And put it on the agenda, get it on an agenda, and talk about it, because we wouldn't need to go through the step of getting all the CFOs if one or two of the presidents believed in it and just took it there directly. But I don't know what they could do other than suggest that everybody, or maybe they make agreements there. I don't know about.
Well, that at least one of the hesitancies, as expressed by my vice president for government relations, is Michigan standing alone. We don't necessarily want to put ourselves in a position where even the perception is that this is the University of Michigan dealing with this exclusively or advocating for this exclusively, and that's why, as I've been talking with Mike, it's the interest in having a broader coalition, a broader number of Michigan institutions, and so therefore, to use your suggestion, certainly more than one CFO, more than one president bringing this up to the table.
Okay.
So therefore, that there should be 2, 3, or 4 CFOs and presidents who are at least briefed on this topic sufficiently enough so that they could be collectively be advocates for taking a deeper dive and advocating for some change.
Well, I'm also on the MyAPA board. I could bring it up at our board meeting and ask if we could make an effort as a group, so that and whether we reach out to just our individual facility directors and ask them to talk to their CFOs, or whether we have a statement that goes out to several of those CFOs at one time, or whatever. We can talk about it. And
will there be a board meeting? Will there be a board meeting in association with next week's meetings?
There is a short board meeting,
okay.
But it's usually pretty cut and dried. But I could. I'm certainly going to be seeing all these people, so I could talk to them and see if we can get some sort of. I don't know if we would come up with some sort of official statement at that time, but we could certainly talk about whether we want to pursue it and how we might pursue it and that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, and Mike, I'll have to make sure that I'll have your assistance here. Was that the MyAPA board that was on campus there back in October, was it not?
It was a greater
okay.
A group. It was the board plus
right.
the senior facilities officers at the rest of the schools.
And so at that time, they had at least identified, 3 to 5 people to supposedly be a part of a task force or an ad hoc effort to try to, as you say, develop a statement or develop a MyAPA position. And when we sought to have a follow-up, I don't know if it was the chair, Mike, or somebody else that said, well, let's talk about it again in February. And it just sort of left me with that feeling of keep on kicking this down the road kind of thing, as opposed to...
That was Tim. Steve,
okay.
there was an email. I'm not sure if you were involved in it. If you were copied, I could go back and dig it out, but I probably rather not. He said, well, Mike, we're going to talk about this. I had actually tried to follow up on some of the things that Jim had said, and then Tim reminded us that we weren't going to do anything until February. So now it's February, And I think kicking the can down the road is probably the appropriate word. Look, folks, we've been at this for almost 20 years.
Well, yeah.
We've been doing this for a very long time, and if the state, even if the state of Michigan isn't involved, most of the rest of the world is involved, okay? So we try to make this point, is that to be leaders in the best often means that you're alone. And I know that that's not always a widely shared view, but I will also tell you that, and I'll point this out, this is the international trade publication for the International Standards Organization, where we try to explain to people we are just too large an industry not to be in this space. We are succeeding more or less on our own. We believe we need to scale it up, and I hope Peter will be happy that we put the Western Michigan University solar card team in front of the University of Michigan football. But anyway, it's very well explained here, folks, and somebody has to tell us where we're failing in trying to communicate this message, other than the fact that we can't get an hour commitment, a commitment of resources, because there's the resources in the education industry is so thin. We don't see that was, you know, when it comes down to, okay, I need somebody to be, you need to devote. So for example, if I would go to today's agenda, if I can find the darn thing now, we would be asking, for example, here's all the board meetings. This is almost what happened last time, Jim, if you recall, or one of these meetings. I said, okay, who can I get to these board meetings? It involves probably about 4 hours worth of work, 4 hours to go out there, and maybe 4 hours to prepare for the meetings. Nobody raises their hands. Nobody raises their hands. Let the University of Michigan do it.
Well, you are a good school, so.
Well, I do appreciate that. One thing that we've identified here on our annual report is what we call the free rider problem, and it's not just our industry. There's actually a formal. There's been a lot of papers written on it, but if I go to here, we haven't solved the free rider problem. Creativity is not efficient. Consensus is not strategy, and change is hard. We have a free rider problem on our hands right now. It's very well known in economic circles is that one group benefits from the results of others, and so it's our due diligence as an institution to spend our resources wisely. The University of Michigan is bearing all the results. We are. And if you look at the transcripts, how the laws are written essentially, you'll see our fingerprints on almost every one of them. So, but the reason for that is we're not really sure, are we a business?
Well,
let
me go back just for a minute to the SFO meeting. There was a couple of things that came up. One was trying to get the people aware of what's going on and trying to get people to step up. But there was also the request for funding, and I think that's what Tim was putting off until February. So I will make sure that, as much as I can, make sure that's discussed, that funding issue, and that was part of the NFPA. There's some study there. I don't remember exactly all the wording there. But there was some need for some infusion of cash into the effort. And I think that was what one of the things we'd be talking about.
Yeah, that's the Research Foundation project, and I believe that we actually have that covered. I can give you the link so you can see where we remained on that one. I believe we have it down here. We have it fairly well covered. This is where Rich and this is the let's see. Let's do it. Let me do a better search here. And in any case, I will give you that's actually on the material that I gave you. Where is it down here? Okay, I don't want to belabor it anymore, but yeah, there's about $19,000 we're looking for, and MyAPA has the ability to do some of it, maybe not all of it, and then of course that just gets us the what that will do is it will support this particular problem we have with power systems being being oversized. And when you solve the
Right,
problem,
yeah.
when you're oversizing, when the NEC says you have to size your power system at 3.5, and yet ASHRAE says 1/3 of that, you have a problem on your hands. And so we were able to solve about half of that. But we need, and that's for our industry is about $3 to $6 billion a year. Let me repeat, that's worth about $3 to $6 billion a year of what we'll call total cost of ownership, right there. And so we know we can get more of it. So that's what that research is about. Now I have you fully prepared to make those arguments. Sometimes my blog gets, even I have a number of people working in my blog, and so sometimes I can't even find it. I'll do one more, but it was a fairly extensive presentation that we made to MyAPA, and we think that it's a very compelling case from an energy manager standpoint also.
Right.
We think.
No, I can see it.
Yeah, we think, and this really is no joke. It may sound, but and it's hard to say this sometimes because we have a lot of good people working in sustainability, but this is no joke, folks. We're talking about completely rethinking the way commercial buildings are designed in at least 50 years, and when you're able to get your power systems down and more right-sized to follow your HVAC and your lighting load down, you're talking about up to 10% of a building's energy cost right there. So I won't go any farther. That is the largest impact item I can see. But I'm an electrical engineer. I think maybe the mechanicals, I would hazard a guess, and we should probably have a mechanical engineer telling me that, no, Mike, mechanical engineering can save more. So I'm glad for them. Just show me how and get the research paid for. So it's really good for Jim to hear this from MyAPA. I'm going to see if I can get Sal back on the phone. Hi, Sal. Are you able to hear us again?
Yes.
Excellent. Oh, boy.
Yes.
So could you tell Sal a little bit of what you do, because you are close to the New Jersey. We think of New Jersey as part of the Big Ten now. Did you know that?
Yeah, I've heard that.
So do you want to tell the group what you do there at Rutgers?
All right. I apologize for the connection and the feedback. I'm not technically savvy, so. Anyway, I'm the construction official at Rutgers University. We have a agreement with the state regulators that we do self-enforcement of building codes. So under agreement with the state, I have full authority to administer the state building code in-house. We issue permits, perform inspections and plan reviews, and issue all the legal certificates of occupancy. We also maintain, we have an elevator safety unit within my department that does the annual and semi-annual cyclical elevator inspections. We have about 400 devices in our inventory, which we inspect twice a year. I personally take active role in code development, both at the ICC and in the NFPA processes. I don't necessarily have a lot of proposals under my name, but I participate in committees through regions and committees such as the Building Code Development Committee that the NFPA sponsors for its 5000 and 101. That's pretty much it.
So, Sal, how active are the state colleges and universities in New Jersey? How active are they in putting new ideas in front of those code committees, at least that you can see, 101 and the others?
Actually, not at all. I'm pretty much doing it all by myself.
Yeah, well, that's how I got to know you. Sal, you track actually rather well. I know who's writing code and who isn't. I will just tell you that. I don't want to go into the details about it, but it's fairly easy. I have a staff person help me, and we look at who's putting new ideas out there, who's actually writing code and getting votes versus somebody who's just going to the meetings. Yeah. And you are not the one that does. You are actually writing code and getting votes. So that's So I think you're underselling yourself in that direction.
Well, I mean, I like to think that we're pretty successful in the ones that we have proposed. I personally wish that we utilized 5,000 as a building code. I've been developing it since it started in 2000. I think it's a good document. I think the NFPA process is a good process. And I'm not real comfortable, personally, in my own opinion, with the ICC process. I think it's for code officials, and it's a self-serving organization.
Yeah, I wanted to, so you're referring to NFPA 5000, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so just a quick overview, gentlemen. NFPA 5000 is I hesitate to say a competitor standard to the ICC, but I talked to you earlier about how the enforcement officials, what we call the conformity assessment officials, they tend to be the people who are most knowledgeable of what's going on in the business. However, the trade-off you get is that they're likely to err on the side of safety. Now, it's very hard to make an argument that a facility manager doesn't want safety, but he also knows that safety has to have a cost, and he wants to know how much, so to say, does he want to put on its deductible. It's very hard for these guys to reconcile all these. So NFPA has 5,000 building code, and it is one that has a balance of interests, which is producers, general interests, and users. And that's the difference between the two documents. And there's a rather different mentality. I still think the ICC, because of its history, is the dominant document suite, but at least there's a competitor standard. Do I summarize that well enough to Sal?
Yeah, I think it's fine. It's actually used internationally, and I think a part of that is because of the widespread use of the NFPA documents. So the building code, which pretty much mirrors the life safety code, is already recognized by certain industries like healthcare and certainly by foreign governments. And again, I think the difference is one is born out of the code enforcement community as opposed to from the industrial and, as you said, ANSI consensus type of format where everybody has a seat at the table.
Okay, welcome to the Big Ten. Okay, I'm keying you in here, so I'm not sure if you can see this. So to get to Jim's question, which is, we have an organization within the state of Michigan. It's called the President's Council, and we want to roll this out in an orderly fashion so that more resources are given to do really simple things. I think it's very simple to get somebody to a meeting, for example. But it's hard. You think it's hard. And even if we were to get somebody to the meeting, he's got to be able to prepare for it. So at every institution, we could ask if is there a local expert that can be brought away. Roughly, it's about 16 hours of work. Now, to a consultant like like Mark Krueger's firm, 16 hours a month of non-billable time is significant. But that's what we're asking for these organizations, or we start to pool it. And essentially, because U of M is doing all the work, it's all pooled here. And we think that that's unwise in the long run. We've been trying to get this thing started over a period of years. So let me get to my earlier question. Is there a organization in the state of New Jersey similar to this President's Council that we have in the state of Michigan? That I don't know how many universities are in New Jersey, but is there an organization like this where the college presidents get together and talk about business?
Yes, there is. There is a President's Council in New Jersey. Rutgers is the only state university as far as statewide. And then we have other state-funded universities such as Montclair State and Ramapo State, things like that. And there's 9 of those. And in addition, we have private universities. But there is a President's Council, but no one is involved in facilities outside of the traditional APA participation.
Okay, yeah, I see you have something here then. Okay. So, and so Jim's question is, how do you go? Maybe do you have anything to ask Jim? Maybe Jim, you want to talk for a minute?
No, just that I've got to depart and prepare for some upcoming meetings here at 11, and so I needed to leave, but it sounded as if I heard from Steve that at least that at this at next week's MyAPA board meeting, you'll make an effort to try to restart this conversation at the MyAPA board level here. That Tim at least seemed to be receptive to back in October.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Get it going. We'll talk about it for sure.
Okay, Jim, before you leave, based on our conversation last month, I showed you our website. So I changed we changed some of these bubbles here, and we're still rolling out. This should be ready for you, Steve, by next week for you to roll. But this is us approaching. You'll see it going to a different. You'll see updated information here. So this is just, and we're using this as a template to try to get away from the technical, too much from the technical, and just try to deal with what we think are unifying ideas for the state of Michigan. That's obviously the love of nature, but there are some technical reasons. There are some technical, political issues we want to deal with, and we felt that maybe having less of a website that's less, let's say, litigation looking or less threatening would be a little bit easier to rally unification. So you'll see this fixed up a little bit, Jim. So I think the main thing we did was we took we simplified the statement. This is all we're trying to do. And you're hearing from New Jersey that they have the same problem.
Sooner or later, we're going to have to present some case studies and some facts and figures, because that's, as Steve pointed out, that's what our CFOs are going to be interested in hearing about. What is this costing us? What is this regulation that is imposed upon large public users? What is it costing us in short run, long term? Because you're just going to have to keep it simple and stupid. That that aspect of putting this into some terms that people will can get their arms around and understand at the CFO level, and then ultimately at a Department of Licensing and Regulation level that says, look, this is the cost of these unnecessary and overkilled regulations upon our schools and our universities and other major institutions and business that warrant reconsideration, warrant reevaluation, warrant having user advocates and facility users at the table when these rules and regulations are imposed.
Okay.
That's so pictures are one thing, but I think people understand numbers and figures and actual impact.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to have to be able to, I think, communicate for it to be meaningful.
Well, and I guess I need somebody to tell me why when I make a statement like this, why when I make a statement like this, why when I make a statement like this, and have the academic papers laid out. We have, and I've had 260 downloads on this page. This is 130. Why this isn't clear enough? Tell me why that's not clear enough.
I haven't had the chance to review those myself.
It's just, and I'll do anything it takes to get these guys to and if it's that they don't want to understand, I get that also. But I'm telling you, this works. It continues to work, and all your questions about case histories are right here. Safer, simpler. Every case where we have made things safer, simpler, lower cost, and longer lasting are written here. Not just one or two papers. We're talking about dozens of papers. It's documented.
I'm wondering if what is it? What the old saying? The media is the message. I'm wondering if your stuff or things like this, if it could be incorporated or studied at the at NACUBO level or an Apple level, if somebody did a white paper on it that would get out to the presidents of the CFOs of the universities nationwide.
Guess what, Steve?
So,
let me tell you something.
You've already done that 3 times.
And Jim's got to hear this all either. They will not listen to. They rejected. They rejected our proposal to present to NACUBO. Just so you know. So both Jim and Steve were at that meeting, and I prepared a proposal for both Joe and Rich to speak to NACUBO. NACUBO rejected it. It's too complicated. It's too difficult. We don't understand what you're talking about. That's the answer we got. I don't want to show you the email, but we got an answer from the president of NACUBO that said, our committees have made their final decision. This is not what we want to hear at our national conference.
Well, I can understand that. I mean, in a sense, but I'm talking about something like somebody is enlisted to write a paper that comes out of NACUBO or comes out of APA that has this information that states, the study's been done and this is costing, and these the standards boards are not. They don't have users on there, and because of that, somebody could maybe make a case that it's a simplification of the whole process. It comes down to some sort of conclusions as to what this is costing, and have it come from a source that is believable, not believable, but has political standing across the board, not just from a single university, as you're saying, or a single group, but some organization has looked at it and looked over the issue and said, okay, yes, we agree with this, and this is. I'm just wondering if something like that came out in the NACUBO magazine potentially.
We were rejected twice there also. We were rejected there twice, so that's why basically we put this one out. So the trade associations have not been. We're trying to work with the trade associations, but there's some there are some difficulties there that really are not their fault. It goes back to the U.S. tax code, and also the tendency they make a fair amount of money not doing this. So why should they do it?
Right. Well, I have to run also.
Okay.
Well, to be someplace else in 5 minutes. So
I hope I'm grateful. We are recording this. It allows others to hear it. Certainly my boss and maybe Jim's boss. We didn't get to the agenda, all the agenda items, but I think it was important when I began to see that the 5 people here really did need to hear each other's what each other had to say. I think it was very helpful. So that's why I said, let's just let the agenda, we already know what to do here. There's plenty to do. We know all the specifics, and I thought this was a very helpful discussion. I'm glad you all met each other.
okay.
So I guess what I'll do is
luck next week. I'll be anxious to hear. What kind of feedback Steve and the MIAPA board provide next week.
Okay, we can do that, and I wouldn't doubt if Pete Strauss will be there too, so Apple will hear it also.
And they'll hear this call also. So, well, again, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. This is surprisingly one of the more enlightening for me discussions, and I'll have this posted on here in the next, before the day is out, and hopefully, Steve, you'll see the agenda for later on this afternoon for the energy conference. So, anything else?
Okay, sounds good.
Anything else, Mark or Steve or Sal?
No.
Okay. Thanks very much, gentlemen.
Okay.
Have a good day.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.